our boys under 17s made it to the World Cup. They've qualified. But in the current showing of the under 17 AFCON, Jay, we've seen a couple of problems, right? They won their first game against Egypt, but then struggled when they played against, if I'm mistaken, Cameroon and now Burkina Faso with physicality. And I want to ask you this question, Jay. When you now think about beyond the borders, beyond the African continent, when you go into a big competition like the World Cup, do you think at some point the physicality or the lack thereof hurts us, or do you think we'll find a way around it?
It hurts us because we're not prepared for it. And my takeaway from watching the Amajimbos against Cameroon as well as Burkina Faso, first of all, what do they feed those boys in Africa, man? Like, I'm a small dude, right? Like, and I'm a small South African dude. I look at those boys and I think to myself, as a full grown adult, I would absolutely struggle physically against those kids. I don't even know if they qualify as kids. It's actually ridiculous when you see our players like lined up against them. You know, we just spoke about Unokumatlo. Like, remember when Banyana were lined up against Sweden in the World Cup? It was Sweden, right? Was it Sweden or no?
Yeah,
Sweden.
Yeah.
And at the corners, you see like Abu Team Bala when it comes to in comparison to the players that were marking on the Swedish side. It's the same thing with the Amajimbos. And the thing is, Chuck, right? We know that to be the case. That has been the case for eons. That is the case now, and I don't know, and unless as the generation of parents that we are becoming and going into the future, the nutrition is different or whatever the case may be. Oh, we have children with taller people. I don't know. We give the genetic pool a chance to thrive. Unless that happens, this is always going to be the case. And that's why I say, Chuck, it's a lack of preparation for me. It's not that we don't know this. And it's not for me a matter of, well, there's nothing we can do about it, right? Because we have seen other sides. You think of the Brazilians, you think then in terms of the senior side, the Spanish who won those Euros and the World Cup. They were on the smaller side. Your Xavis and your Nestas, and even if you go to Barcelona, your Lionel Messi's, they were more diminutive in size, right? But they weren't tiny in terms of like their body weight. So one, you can do something about that in terms of strength and conditioning, as well as nutrition. That, well, if they're not growing any taller, you can try make them stronger to at least be able to compete, to hold their own in duels and in the tackle, right? But for me, Chuck, when I say we're not prepared for it, is because how you mitigate that is the style of play. Because if you cannot go up against them physically, then you should be able to play around them. There were occasions in the game against Cameroon and even against Burkina Faso where you see the one-touch football, you see the movement, you see the third man runs, you see the associative play where those boys from those West African countries, they want to come hard, they want to come fast, they want to press, and we've been struggling against their press because it is ferocious, it is physical, and the moment that those teams played like that, the South Africans struggled. They struggled to keep the ball. Whether they couldn't win a second ball, they couldn't play out from the back. As I'm saying, whenever they were pressed, they lost the ball. You saw the winning goal by Burkina Faso. It's a mistake that's happening in the back because of the pressure. But as I'm saying, when you've seen the one-touch football, the thing that we would describe as a South African style, we've been able to play around them. We've been able to get behind the defense. And the thing is, there's not a lot of that happening in terms of this is pre-planned. It happens, it feels like, it looks like to me, off the cuff. That, well, when we can get that going, it works. And in my mind, it's why are we not training for that to be the case? And I don't think it's coming across as something that is instilled from development in the different clubs, and then when they come together as the under-17s. And given they don't come together often enough as the under-17s to develop the kind of chemistry or to develop that kind of style of play. And maybe that's something to look into. And I know it's hard to do, especially because at those ages, at 16, going into the latter years of the teenage years, they are becoming a part of the professional scene, and it's hard to just take them away for a camp. But we need those maybe when it is an international break, and if it's a question of these boys are contracted to professional teams, which a majority of them aren't, right? They're still in development ranks. There's an opportunity to take them and have camps and develop the style. So by the time you get to a tournament, and you come up against the physically imposing sides, you know how to play around that. So it's a problem, it's a hindrance, but it's one that's been there, and at this point we should have a solution. I do believe the solution is their style of play, but the issue is that we have not taken a concerted effort to bring out that advantage for us.
Yeah, actually, I think it may be a problem going forward into the World Cup, as you detailed as well, because we're not prepared for it. And I think if you can't deal with it here on the African continent, when you go in Europe as well, because there are teams who play a quick and fast brand of football with the physicality, and how do you adjust to that? I just think maybe we need those Messi drugs, man, to just boost development.
What Messi drugs, Chuck?
Apparently, in his story.
We're not just injecting hormones into our boys. Like Messi had a growth deficiency. It wasn't just man, he's just on the shorter side. Let's try and make him as tall as possible.
You don't think that's a widespread problem in our country? Just because there's so many of us, we don't quite see it as a problem. That's because Jay, when you
it isn't a deficiency. It's a genetic thing. We're just small.
But for the competition, it might be a deficiency. And I say this because, Jay, you think about in that particular age group, right? But Mapena was a star for Sundowns. If you look at where he ranks amongst his own teammates, not the tallest. And when you go to Africa, you realize that they're much, much smaller. Then there's like Mfundo Vilagazi, Mdu Shabalala, Relem Fukeng, all the stars that are supposed to shine bright, not necessarily on the larger side of life, right? Obviously, you've got Jomokwen and Vala already set up, who are big boys, Allow Fosters and stuff like that, Evidence Mahopa. But the new kids on the block, the guys who are the hot property, and right now in the current squad, Emil Witboy, one of the smaller gents in the side. And so I think the thing is that Angaz, for whatever reason, the guys who are our talisman are not necessarily great, are not necessarily big. Number one, number two, I think as you're speaking about being prepared for it, I think also their opponents aren't necessarily large. If I go back to an episode I watched of Itiskitan where Devin Hunt details how he found Mamenyang. He was like, I found this guy playing in the sand and he was heading and doing all these physical things. And I'm like, great, in the PSL, you'll be great because he knows what he's going to be dealing with back home. That he's going to be towering, he's going to be tall, he's going to have the biggest advantage when it comes to aerial presence. So we don't quite get tested, I think, often enough in terms of how do we deal with physicality, which is why I think it was a bit too late for under 17. But players like Abo Tushabala, Abo Nabo Villaga, as small as they are, getting physical in the PSL, I think, pose them well. They get to understand that you have to go against man strength. And on the continent, even under 17, you have to go against man strength relative to how big these boys are. And I think we aren't prepared for that because we don't think about that, to be honest. We think that our brand of football will work just well enough. And when you come against a style that's contrary to what you guys are bringing to the party, then it becomes a problem because there's only so many passes you can play. Because the other thing is that sometimes we overplay. Like in the game against Burkina Faso, the chances are creating, you guys, okay, play. Okay, you guys, score, shoot, and we don't do those things. So if you're not executing your game plan very well, plus the physicality, it becomes a problem. Because when you get to Europe, there are teams that are going to play fast and have the physicality as well. South American sides might have the same assets as well. So I think, Jay, we should be thinking about that long term. We should be thinking about, Hugo Bruce came to us and said, Guti, I know you guys play a good brand of football, but going to AFCON, I need bodies. I need big bodies. Urias Tole comes into feature and you realize he's not just units, but he's got footballing brains as well. I think we need to try build a profile like that. In terms of, okay, we're not just scouting physical specimen, but we need to try find a balance. In terms of, okay, when we're playing against Burkina Faso, make sure we've got this player, that player on. You guys will come through as subs, as our talisman. When we're playing Egypt, we'll play our faster guys and we'll play our regular style of football. We need to be able to adapt like that. But for as long as we go by one style of play, one brand or one type of footballer, we'll have problems. Because I think with the Barcelonas of this world, Jay, there are benefits to having time to play together, understanding a system, and then being fruitful in that system. So I think it will be a problem going to the World Cup unless you practice this, which I don't think you quite have time for that under 17, unless you work with them quite early under 15. You know your core players, that these guys are most likely to be together under 17 onwards. So I think short of them doing this in their club sides at international level, it's quite hard to adjust to that. So I think it's the problem that's always going to be an issue for South African football. But as you said, style of play, tactics can work around that.